Hello everybody, welcome back to Property Couple. I'm Leah.
And I'm AK.
And this is our channel where we talk about property, business and working together as a couple.
Today we're going to take you through how we've achieved higher rentals across our investment properties.
Over the last 3 years, we have bought and renovated 5 HMOs, which are houses of multiple occupancy, consisting of 24 rented rooms. So this video is for anybody looking to get into this business or for anybody who already has investment properties looking to achieve the best rent possible.
So let's start off with one of the most underrated things that will allow you to increase your rentals in your investment properties, and that is dressing and staging. What is dressing and staging?
Dressing and staging is what it says on the tin. It allows you to showcase the property in its best possible capacity by dressing it and staging it with beds, wardrobes, furniture, soft furnishings, artwork on the walls, even having plants and little trinkets in the room that make the tenant feel like this is their home or they could really imagine themselves living here. This also really lends itself to people like students or people that don't have much stuff and they're just moving into a property with just their clothes. It makes them feel like they don't need to buy all the things and they could just move straight into that property that same day or the next day.
Yeah, it really helps them sort of imagine what it would be like to live there. After all, home is where your stuff is.
One of the most frequently asked questions we get from viewers and fellow investors is, what dressing and staging do you leave inside the property? I see this comment almost every day on our YouTube channel, and the answer is however much or however little the tenant would like. There's a welcome pack that contains things like coffee and tea and biscuits, which is a really nice touch for everybody. But if the tenant wants to pay for all the bedding and the cushions and everything we've placed in that room, that comes at a slightly higher price. But if they don't need any of that stuff, they have all of their own things, they just want the bed, the wardrobe, the desk, the things that come with the room, then that's also an option too. I just want to put on screen now an example of one of our rooms with staging and without staging. This will really help you to get a feel for what the tenant looks at when they're looking at an advert. Are they going to click on this room or are they going to click on the room that already looks like home? I know what I would click on. And I think for investors, one thing that you have to think about is, what is the most cost efficient way that I can make this property feel like home without spending so much money on expensive furniture? And often the accessories is where it's at. We're going to do a video in the future all about dressing and staging, so leave us a comment below if you're interested more in this subject.
And this leads us fantastically onto point number 2, which is professional photography, which sounds like a very obvious thing to do, but you'd be surprised how little people actually do this.
You only have to scroll through Rightmove or Spareroom to see that lots of property investors take photos of their property on their phones or just on a really old camera. We don't even use the cameras that we use for YouTube. We hire professional photographers to take beautiful wide angle photos of our rooms in high resolution, because these are the best possible photos to showcase the lovely dressing and staging we've just done for the rooms. It really helps the tenant imagine what kind of space they'll be moving into. And on top of that, you can go one step further by even offering 360-degree tours.
And you'll see now on screen, this is one of our early properties that we actually paid for a 360 tour on. And this is great because it allows tenants that may not even live in the area to take a look at the property. It also pre-qualifies potentially tenants as to whether or not they are going to be interested or not in the property. And overall, it's just a great investment to allow you to market the rooms a lot better.
You might be thinking, how are all these things that I'm spending money on going to get me better rent? Well, in our opinion, the better quality the room, the better quality the tenant. And although that's not the case for absolutely everyone, it has worked out that 99% of our tenants have been very respectful to the rooms that they've moved into due to the fact that they're newly refurbished, they've been dressed nicely, the furniture is brand new, the bathrooms are brand new. We think that if you respect your properties, you will get respectful tenants in return. As with anything, it's always helpful to have an idea of the cost of something like dressing and staging. With everything, there's always the option to do these things yourself. But with our projects, we use a dressing and staging company, and in their services, they include a pre-staging consultation. We decide on the colour scheme together. We bounce around ideas together. They then put together a mood board. We approve it. Then they sort out all of the goods delivery, assembly, installation, labour, and the full dressing of the HMO and the photography, which we'll talk about next, and disposing of any rubbish along the way. So for the price of everything, all of that, it came to just under £7,500, which sounds like a lot, but actually went through and totaled up the cost of everything, and it was only about 1,500 less to do all of that ourselves, source all of those, spend hours scrolling online finding specific beds, specific wardrobes. Everything would have been flat packed, whereas using a company that are professional, they have relationships with people where things can already come semi-built, or they've just got it down. So we chose to use Natasha for ours from Dressing Rooms and Staging.
Yeah, and I think neither of us are sort of into DIY, and we're not saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing. Obviously, the profit when you do things yourself can obviously be a lot higher. However, as Leah said, we're trying to treat this more like a business where we bring in experts to do the bits that we can't do. And the last time I actually built some bedside drawers when we lived in the flat in Chichester at St Agnes, I ended up buying children's ones, so they're about this big.
Oh, that was me. I bought the children's ones.
Oh, sorry. So Leah bought the children's ones, which should have been easy to assemble because they're about this big. And actually, when I assembled them, I got to the end and there was like a piece still there, and I was like, that was like step 2, and now I am not going to disassemble this whole thing just to put that in. So that is why we should not do DIY.
I think if you're an investor that lives far away from your investment area, it makes sense to use someone like Natasha, no plug, we're paying customers. Her company, Dressing Rooms Home Staging, offer everything from start to finish. You can choose to either be there on the day. We like to be there and be around it and film what's going on and see the setup, or you can choose to not be there and they'll just get on with their job and you'll see the house as a finished product at the end. But this service is just something that has really elevated the quality of our HMOs. I don't think I could imagine completing a project without having the dressing and staging. It's part of the process now. The 360 tour that you've just seen on screen is not something that was baked into our dressing room staging quote. We actually use another supplier for this. So just to give you the heads up, if you were to do that, you have to factor in a little bit of extra money for the 360 tour. Once again, it does save you time and money if you don't want to be opening the door to lots of potential time wasters that are not going to rent out your property. It can help speed the process along. So overall, the return on time invested is much higher.
The next point is virtual staging, and this one is super cool. I actually work with a company called The Home Club, and they're a lettings agency based in Guildford, and it's actually a friend of mine and I help him with the marketing behind that. Super interesting because there was a property that was very premium. It was renting for £6,500 a month, and when I saw the photos there was no furniture in it, and that's very normal for a buy-to-let property. Obviously with our HMOs it's very different because it's usually people that just require a room. With a buy-to-let property it's very different because the tenancies are usually a lot longer, anywhere from 12 months to maybe 24 months or even longer, it depends. And often those families, they bring furniture, they bring their own bits and pieces there to make it a home. We were actually struggling to let it at the beginning, and although it's a fantastic property and it looks so beautiful, it just felt a little bit cold to me. And so we brought in some virtual staging, and you'll see actually on screen now the difference between how it was before versus after we'd virtually staged it.
It's worth mentioning with these properties that in the adverts you do have to say this furniture is not included. Often these properties let as unfurnished properties, and people see these photos and they don't realise, because the virtual staging is so good, you can't tell that that's not real furniture. It's all done on a computer screen.
It's unreal.
It's even the way that they cast shadows on the room is so perfect. So it's definitely worth adding into your advert if you are advertising a property with virtual staging, to mention that this property lets unfurnished.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's unreal for the cost of it as well. I think those photos cost us £35 per photo.
Yes, and you did quite a few photos, so
yeah,
it was a decent investment, but it will certainly help people view the property and imagine themselves in it.
Exactly, and I think we had like 5 leads off the back of that within a few days since advertising it with the virtual staging.
It's a really good point. Whilst virtual staging is amazing for buy-to-let properties or properties that are actually going to be unfurnished when you move in, I would avoid doing it for our rented rooms, just because one of the things we offer is a ready-made room, bed, desk, wardrobe. So you wouldn't really want to virtually stage an HMO unless the tenant specifically doesn't want anything there, which is quite rare.
Yeah, I think the only reason you would virtually stage an HMO is if you were trying to secure tenancies way ahead of actually completing the project. It's actually something we've considered because on our latest project, the care home conversion, we're actually working with a letting agent that is talking to a lot of corporate companies, and we're trying to secure a corporate let for it. They're struggling to imagine it because they're walking around a building site at the moment. So in that scenario, we would potentially consider some virtual staging. But as Leah says, it's much more powerful for a buy-to-let.
And one more question on the virtual staging, since you organised that and I was not part of it. How important is it to send the virtual staging company professional photos? Or you can't virtually stage off an iPhone photo, can you?
Yeah, I mean, it makes even more of a difference. It's kind of like you need all of these bits.
You've got to have your plain room, but you've got to take it on a nice professional camera so that they can go in and make it look beautiful.
Exactly.
Moving on, the last point we want to touch on is including a cleaner in the rent. So this is very specific to our rented rooms, and AK is going to talk about why we think this is really important to increasing the overall rent that you get across 12 months.
And in our properties, we don't necessarily charge more for a cleaner, but what happens is every 2 weeks a cleaner goes into the rooms, cleans the rooms, including the en-suites as well, sends us photos, which means that we can get eyes on the room to understand what's happening, is the tenant treating the room as they should be treating the room. But essentially what it allows us to do is to not spend so much money on the maintenance of that room. When we first started, we didn't really understand this concept, and we used to only really get the rooms cleaned after the tenancy. Those tenancies would last from anywhere between 6 months and 12 months, meaning that by the time the tenant left, the room was never really cleaned. And it meant that we would have to replace things like the shower seals, some of the skirting boards because of the water that had come out, and just things like this. So it actually means that we end up spending less on the maintenance, meaning that our overall cash flow increases.
It's a strange one because you might be thinking, well, why would a tenant not report things that aren't going well in their room? And I think it's because when you own the property, you view it in a different way to the tenant viewing it. So if you're a tenant and you see a loose shower seal, you might not think, I need to tell my landlord about that. Whereas with having a cleaner go in and clean the rooms and the en-suites, we've got eyes into the property, and it's allowing us to keep on top of maintenance issues before the tenancy is over, and then we finally get eyes in.
Yeah, and it also just adds to the products that you are offering as well. So if your room includes furniture, it includes cleaning,
Wi-Fi.
It includes Wi-Fi, it includes bills. It's a no-brainer. The demand for our rooms are very high, and so we can obviously command, the best possible rent for those rooms and actually spend less on the maintenance as well.
It's true. If anyone's interested in a video about the cleaning or the process behind the maintenance of these rooms, maybe we'll do another video on that. Maybe AK can talk more about what happens if a tenant opts out of having a cleaner, because we can't force someone to have a cleaner go in. So let us know if you'll be interested in all the nitty-gritty stuff around how we manage each tenancy based on what we want and what they want. And that is it for this video. We hope you guys have enjoyed it. Please let us know if you'd be interested in more. We're Property Couple. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, mostly YouTube, and we'll see you in the next one.
And if you haven't already, please remember to hit that like button and/or subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.